Mark had only lived in the neighborhood for 3 years, but already he knew the rhythm of it. Mornings started with sprinklers hissing on perfectly green lawns, the soft hum of electric carts as early risers walked their dogs, and the distant echo of leaf blowers, always leaf blowers. By 7:30 a.m. sharp, the houses all followed the same playbook: stone and stucco fronts, 2-car garages. Front doors painted in one of 3 approved colors: tranquil taupe, dove wing, or slate whisper. Even the mailboxes stood at identical heights. Like soldiers at attention, he'd picked the place for the right reasons: good schools, low crime, a backyard big enough for his kids to run around without ending up in the street. His house wasn't fancy, a modest 2-story, the kind built for people who fix things for a living, not for flipping on HGTV, but he kept it clean. Gutters cleared, paint touched up every other spring, grass cut on Saturday mornings, never too short, never too long. He followed the rules not because he loved them, but because he respected the idea behind them. We all chip in to keep things decent. And then, on a Tuesday afternoon in late June, the kind of day where the air felt like wet wool and the asphalt shimmered in the heat, the first letter came. It was tucked into his mailbox, between a grocery flyer and a coupon for oil changes. Not an envelope. A stiff, cream-colored cardstock folder. Folded once, sealed with a tiny gold sticker shaped like an oak leaf, the logo of the Sycamore Ridge. Homeowners Association. He opened it at the kitchen table, wiping his hands on a dish towel. His lunch, a turkey sandwich and a glass of iced tea, sat half-finished. He skimmed the header. Official notice of covenant violation. His stomach did a little dip. He hadn't put up Christmas lights in July. He hadn't parked on the lawn. He hadn't even mowed the grass yet this week. It was only Monday's cut, still holding up fine. Then he saw the photo. It was a picture of his driveway. More specifically, his truck. There it sat. His 2012 Ford F-150. Black, not shiny black, but the kind of black that fades softly in the Texas sun, a working black. It had steel wheels, no chrome, no giant lift, no spotlights or bull bars. Just a clean, honest truck he'd bought used, paid off in 2 years, and kept running better than most new cars on the block. He used it every day, hauling ductwork and coils to job sites, pulling his small fishing boat to the lake on weekends, helping Mrs. Callahan next door move her patio furniture when her hip flared up last winter. But in the photo, taken from across the street, close enough to see the dent on the rear fender from backing into a pallet at Lowe's 2 years ago, far enough to make it look like surveillance footage, it looked suspicious. Like it didn't belong, the letter said. Pursuant to Section 7.3 of the Sycamore Ridge Covenants. Conditions and restrictions CC and Rs. Vehicles exhibiting non-factory modifications, excessive height adjustments, or a commercial appearance are subject to review and potential restriction. Your vehicle 2012 Ford F-150. Black appears to feature an aftermarket grille and modified suspension, contributing to a visual profile inconsistent with the community's established aesthetic standards. Please remedy this violation within 10 days by either A. Restoring the vehicle to factory original appearance. B. Relocating it to your garage at all times. Or C. Removing it from the property. Failure to comply will result in a $75 fine, with additional daily penalties thereafter. Mark read it twice. Then he picked up the photo and held it closer. Aftermarket grill. He turned the truck's VIN over in his head. 1FTW1E59 CFA12345, and pulled out his phone. A few taps later, he was on Ford's archived 2012 F-150 brochure. Scrolled to the 40 trim. There it was. Same black steel wheels. Same slightly aggressive-looking black grille, listed right there under Appearance Package Option G62. Not custom. Not illegal. Just available. Suspension. He hadn't lifted it. Not really. 2-inch leveling kit, a common legal fix for trucks that sit nose down when empty, installed by a buddy at the shop. It brought the front level with the rear. Not towering. Not ridiculous. just even like it was supposed to be. He walked outside and stood beside the truck, hands in his pockets. The sun beat down. A breeze kicked up, rustling the live oaks. He looked at the house across the street, white hardy plank. Black shutters, 2 identical SUVs in the driveway, a Honda Pilot and a Lexus RX. Further down, a silver Camry. Around the corner, a minivan. All spotless, all low to the ground. All quiet. His truck wasn't loud. It didn't backfire. It wasn't plastered with bumper stickers or toolboxes hanging off the sides. It just looked like what it was, a tool. A reliable, unpretentious, American-made machine built for work and weekends. So why did it feel like he'd parked a tank in the driveway? He went back inside and dug out the thick binder he'd been given at closing the Sycamore Ridge governing documents. Dusty, spiral-bound, with tabs for bylaws, CC and Rs, and architectural guidelines. He flipped to section 7.3. It was 3 pages long, most of it made sense. No inoperable vehicles. No vehicles parked on unpaved surfaces for more than 48 hours. No commercial vehicles with signage over 12 inches by 12. Fair enough. But then came the fuzzy part. The kind of language that lived in the gray zone between rule and opinion. Vehicles shall not present an appearance that is discordant with the overall character and tone of the community. Modifications that create an overly aggressive, industrial, or utilitarian visual impression may be deemed unacceptable at the discretion of the Architectural Review Committee. At the discretion. That phrase sat heavy in his chest. He thought about the neighbors. The guy 2 doors down drove a lifted Jeep with oversized tires and a winch, no fines. The family on the corner had an old Volkswagen camper van parked in their side yard for months, flower decals, curtains in the windows, and nobody said a word. And then there was the new house on Elm, the one with the solar panels and the electric gate, and the stainless steel wedge-shaped pickup parked in the driveway. Looked like something from a sci-fi movie. Angular, reflective, totally unlike anything else on the street. Mark had seen the HOA newsletter. There was even a little blurb. Welcome to the future of sustainable luxury. Kudos to the Reynolds family for their innovative vehicle choice. Innovative, sustainable, luxury. His Ford. Discordant. He made himself another glass of tea. Extra lemon. The way he liked it, and sat on the back porch. Watching the dragonflies hover over the pond he and the kids had dug last summer, it wasn't about the $75 he could pay it. It wasn't even really about the truck, though he'd be lying if he said it didn't sting. It was about how it felt. Like he'd been tagged quietly, politely, but firmly as not quite fitting in. He'd grown up in a neighborhood where trucks were normal, where a man's vehicle said something about his life, what he did, how he provided, what he carried for others. His dad's old Chevy had hauled firewood, helped move college kids, jumped more dead batteries than he could count. Nobody called it visually disruptive. But here, beauty was measured in smooth lines and silent motion. A car shouldn't do anything. It should just be there, clean, quiet, forgettable. He thought about the timing. The letter came just 3 days after Evelyn. Thorne, the woman who chaired the Architectural Review Committee, had stopped him while he was washing the truck on a Saturday. Morning. Just a quick heads up, she'd said. Standing at the edge of his driveway, sunglasses on, clipboard in hand. Not smiling, exactly. Not unfriendly. Just observant. Some of the newer families have mentioned the trucks. Not yours specifically, she added quickly, but the style? You know how it is? First impressions matter. He'd nodded, rinsed the soap off the fender. It's just a work truck, he'd said. Oh, absolutely, she replied. But perception is reality in real estate. He'd let it go. Figured it was just neighborly chatter. Now he knew it wasn't. That night. After the kids were in bed and his wife was reading on the couch, he brought up the letter. She read it silently, her brow furrowing. Then she looked up. They took a photo. From the sidewalk. Or someone's yard. Do they do that to the Tesla? He shrugged. Guess we'll find out. She handed the letter back. You're going to call them? I should probably read the whole rule first. See what it really says. Yeah, she said, quiet for a moment. Just don't let it get under your skin. It's a piece of paper, but it already had. The next morning, did something he rarely did. He parked the truck in the garage. Not because he was giving in. Just to see what it felt like. The garage was full, not messy, but lived in. Lawnmower, leaf blower, toolbox on a rolling cart, his son's bike with the broken pedal, his daughter's scooter, a stack of plastic bins labeled Christmas, camping, garage sale maybe. There was space for the truck. Technically, if he moved everything in, backed in carefully, left just enough room to squeeze out the side door. But it wasn't meant for daily storage. It was a workspace. A shelter for the things that helped life run. He stood in the open garage doorway, looking at the empty driveway. It felt wrong. Like putting a tool back in the drawer before the job was done. He thought about his job. He fixed heating and air systems, the things people only notice when they stop working. In summer, when the AC dies, they call in a panic. In winter, when the furnace quits at 2 a.m., they're grateful for anyone who'll show up in the dark. His truck carried the parts, the tools, the spare coils and capacitors and thermostats. It got dirty. It got scratched. It smelled faintly of solder and rubber gloves, and the peppermints he kept in the Q folder. That wasn't a flaw. That was honesty. He got back in the truck, backed it out slowly, and parked it right where it belonged in the driveway, nose pointing toward the street. Ready for whatever came next. Then he went inside and did something else he rarely did. He reread the CC&Rs. It's all 87 pages, not skimming. Not searching for one phrase, reading line by line. He found things he'd missed before. Architectural harmony shall be maintained through consistency in materials, colors, and massing. Fine, his house matched. Holiday decorations may be displayed from November 15th to January 5th. He always took his lights down by New Year's Day. Fences shall not exceed 6 feet in height and must be constructed of wood, vinyl or wrought iron in approved tones. His was cedar. Stained rustic cedar right from the palette. But section 7.3? It kept coming back to tone. Character, impression, no measurements. No specs. No definitions. Just judgment. And who held that judgment? He looked up the HOA board roster online. Found the committee list. Evelyn Thorne Share, Architectural Review. Bio, retired marketing executive. Passionate about community aesthetics and property value preservation. Preservation. That word kept echoing. Preserving what? The look of a place where nothing ever changed? Where every life looked the same from the street? Where usefulness was secondary to appearance? He wasn't trying to rebel. He didn't want to be the guy who caused trouble. He just wanted to live in his home, do his job, raise his kids, and park the vehicle that helped him do all three. But the letter wasn't going away. 10 days? Then $1.75. He thought about paying it, just to keep the peace. Swallow it. Then he thought about the next letter, and the one after that, and the one that said $100 day, and the lien they could file against his house. If he ignored it long enough, this wasn't about a truck, it was about who got to decide what belonged. And more importantly, who got to decide he didn't. He sat at the kitchen table again, the cream-colored notice lying beside his coffee mug. Sunlight streamed in through the window, catching the fine print on the page. He took a deep breath. Then he opened his laptop. Not to argue. Not to rant. Just to understand. He typed Texas HOA Selective Enforcement Laws and started reading. Outside, a lawnmower started up 2 houses down. A dog barked. A school bus rumbled past on the main road. Life went on, but something had shifted. Quietly, irreversibly. The fantasy. Rules were neutral. That fairness was automatic had just cracked. And Mark. He wasn't the kind of man who walked away from a cracked foundation. He was the kind who fixed it. Mark didn't hear from the HOA again for 12 days. No phone call. No second letter. Just silence. The kind of silence that feels less like mercy and more like someone stepping back to get a better aim. He kept the truck in the driveway, washed it every Sunday, checked the tire pressure, made sure nothing was out of place, no tools left in the bed, no empty water bottles on the dash, no muddy boots on the floor mat. He wasn't trying to provoke anyone. He was just being consistent. If the rule was about appearance, then he'd make sure the appearance was impeccable. Let them find fault with that. He also started paying attention. Not in a suspicious way. Just noticing, like how on Tuesday mornings, Evelyn Thorne walked the neighborhood loop at the same time. Same route, clipboard in hand, sunglasses on, even when it was overcast. She didn't talk to many people. Nodded, smiled politely. But her eyes, they weren't on the birds or the flower beds. They were on details. The angle of a downspout. The color of a front door wreath. The way a garbage can sat 6 inches too far from the garage. He saw her pause once outside the house with the Cybertruck. She didn't take a photo. Didn't write anything down. Just stood there for a full minute, head tilted, like she was admiring a sculpture in a museum. A few days later, the HOA newsletter landed in his inbox. A short spotlight titled Innovation in Motion, Celebrating Forward-Thinking Design. There was a photo, not a covert shot from the sidewalk, but a professionally lit daytime portrait of the Cybertruck, gleaming under the Texas sun. Caption, a bold statement that elevates our community's vision for the future. Mark scrolled past it. Didn't say anything to his wife, but he saved the screenshot. Not because he was collecting evidence yet, just because it felt strange. Like watching someone praise a lightning storm while handing out umbrellas labeled only for certain houses. Then came the Friday. It was one of those late summer evenings where the heat didn't break until the sun dipped behind the water tower. 92 degrees at 5 p.m., humidity thick enough to chew. Mark had just finished helping an elderly neighbor unclog her AC drain line. A simple fix. But the kind that meant she wouldn't have to sleep with 3 fans running all night. He was washing his hands at the outdoor spigot, sleeves rolled up, sweat drying on his neck. When he heard the quiet click-click of sensible shoes on his front walkway, he turned. There she was, Evelyn Thorne. Not an HOI logoed gear, no polo, no badge, just a crisp linen pantsuit. Ivory-colored, somehow still wrinkle-free. Hair pinned neatly. Gold pen tucked into the spiral of her clipboard like a weapon in its holster. "Hi," she said, voice smooth, practiced. "Hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." "Nope," he said, drying his hands on a rag. "Just finishing up." She smiled, not unkindly, but with the kind of warmth that comes from a script. "I'm Evelyn. From the Architectural Review Committee? We sent a little note about 2 weeks ago." "Yeah," he said. "Got it." She nodded, like she expected that. "Good. I just wanted to stop by, courtesy visit really, and see if we could clear things up in person. Sometimes letters feel colder than they're meant to be." "Sure," he said. "Appreciate that." She shifted her weight, glanced at the truck parked just where it always was, gleaming from that morning's wash, and took a half step closer. Not onto the driveway. Just to the edge of the concrete, where the grass met the walk. "That grill," she said, voice dropping slightly like she was sharing a secret. "It's not the factory one, is it?" Mark blinked. "Actually it is." She raised an eyebrow, not in disbelief. "Exactly. More like polite skepticism. The kind you give a kid who says he definitely brushed his teeth." "I mean, it's not the base grill," he clarified. "But it's a Ford option. Came on the XL appearance package. I've got the brochure if you want to see it." He started to reach for his phone. She held up a hand gently. "Oh, I don't doubt you." "It's not about the technical specs, really." He waited. "It's about tone," she said, soft but firm. This neighborhood was designed around a certain feeling, calm, cohesive, uncluttered. When something stands out, even if it's legal, it creates visual noise. And visual noise? Well, it affects how people feel when they drive down the street. Mark looked past her, down Sycamore Loop. A jogger passed. A sprinkler arced water over a perfect lawn. A red-tailed hawk circled high above the oaks. Everything looked peaceful, quiet, but now he saw it differently. Not harmony, but sameness. A curated stillness. And the Cybertruck, he asked, voice even. That doesn't create visual noise? Her expression didn't change. Not a flicker. Just a slow, practiced exhale. That's different, she said. It's intentional design, minimalist, futuristic. It's not trying to be rugged or industrial. It's making a statement about innovation. About where things are headed. Mark almost smiled. Almost. So my truck statement is, what? I fix air conditioners. She didn't laugh. Didn't bristle. Just tilted her head like she was weighing the words. Statements aren't bad, she said. But in a shared environment, we have to ask. What does this say about us? Not just you, us, the collective. He let that sit. There was truth in it, he had to admit. Neighborhoods are a collective. You don't plant a 20-foot palm tree in a yard full of oaks and expect nobody to notice. You don't blast polka music at midnight. You compromise. But where did compromise end and erasure begin? He thought about his dad again, how he'd park his work van in the driveway every night, back when Mark was a kid. It had dents, rust spots, a cracked taillight he never fixed because it still works. Nobody called it visual noise. They called him Mr. Henderson, the plumber. And when their sink backed up, they were glad he lived down the street here. He could be anyone. A consultant, a project manager, a guy who used to fix things before he moved up, wasn't ashamed of what he did. But the neighborhood, it didn't seem to have a slot for it. Evelyn checked her watch, a small gold one, thin band. I've got another stop in 10, she said, tone shifting back to efficiency. But I wanted to make sure you understood this isn't personal. It's about stewardship. We all signed up for that when we bought here. She reached into her bag and pulled out a manila folder, same cream cardstock as the first letter, but thicker this time. This is the updated notice, she said, handing it to him. We've given you extra time until this Friday. After that, the fine goes into effect. $75. And then, well, it compounds. He took the folder. Didn't open it. Compounds how? He asked. 75 for the first week. Then 100 a day after that? The board votes on liens once fines exceed 500. She said it mattered vaguely. Like reading the weather? Mark nodded. Got it. She smiled again. Warmer this time. Like the hard part was over. I really hope we can resolve this before it gets to that point. No one wants that. No, he agreed. No one does. She turned to leave, then paused. One more thing, she said, glancing back. The garage. Is it in use? It's full, he said. Of lawn equipment, bikes, seasonal stuff. She nodded slowly. You know, some residents rent small storage units just for overflow. There's one right off the highway, $25 a month. Might be worth looking into. Then she walked away back straight, pace steady, and got into a silver Prius parked at the curb. No bumper stickers. Oh. Windows tinted just enough. Mark stood there for a long time after she left. The folder in his hand felt heavier than it should. He finally opened it. Same letter. Same photo. But now, at the bottom, stamped in red ink, final notice, action required by 8/16. Friday, he walked inside, set the folder on the kitchen counter, and poured himself a glass of water. His hands weren't shaking. His heart wasn't racing. But something inside him had settled, not anger, not fear, clarity. He pulled out his phone again. This time, he didn't search for laws. He opened his contacts. First, he texted a guy he'd known since trade school, still in the HVAC business, lived 2 neighborhoods over. Hey, ever get hassle from your HOA about your truck? 3 dots. Then dude, got 3 fines last year. Paid him? Didn't seem worth the fight. Next, he called a neighbor, quieter man, early 50s, drove a dark blue Silverado. They'd shoveled snow together once, years ago, after an unexpected ice storm. Yeah, the man said, voice low. They came after mine last fall. Said the black wheels were too aggressive. I swapped M out for the silver ones. Cost me $200? You pay the fines? No, I backed down first. Didn't want the headache. Mark thanked him. Hung up. One more call. The woman who lived across the street, retired teacher, kept a hummingbird feeder in her window. Friendly, but private. He'd helped her hang Christmas lights once. Saw Evelyn stop by, she said before he could even ask. She does that. Not just to you. She'll talk to you about vehicles. No, but she did ask if I'd noticed any changes in the neighborhood's feel lately. A pause. Then she mentioned the Jeep down on Oak. Said it sets a precedent. But she hasn't found them, has she? No, Mark said. She hasn't. That night after dinner, he sat at the table with his wife. He told her about the visit, about the storage unit suggestion, about the calls. She listened, stirring her tea. So what are you thinking? She asked. I'm thinking. This isn't about my truck. No, she said. It's about who gets to decide what belongs. He nodded. Double quotes, and if she's only going after certain kinds of trucks, certain kinds of people, she's not doing her job, Mark finished. His wife looked at him, not with worry. With quiet pride. You're not the type to start fights, she said. No, but you're the type who won't let someone lie about the rules. He smiled. Just a little. Yeah, he said. That's the part I can't walk away from. The next morning, he did something small. He opened the garage. Not to park the truck. Just to see it. Really see it. He measured the space with his feet. Counted the bins. Moved the lawnmower to the side. Imagine backing the F-150 in nose first. Tailgate barely clearing the tool cart. It could fit, but it shouldn't have to. The garage wasn't just storage. It was part of the home's rhythm, where projects happened, where things got fixed, where his son learned how to change oil last summer, standing on a milk crate, hands black with grease, grinning like he'd discovered fire, putting the truck in there full time. It wouldn't just hide the vehicle, it would hide the life it supported. That afternoon, he drove to the public library, not the app, not a quick Google search. The actual building, with the air conditioning, humming, and the smell of old paper and floor wax. He asked the reference librarian, a woman in her 60s, with reading glasses on a chain, if they had, copies of local HOA governing documents. She smiled. We keep them on file. Texas law says they're public record. He sat at a wooden table in the quiet corner, sunlight slanting through the high windows. He pulled out the Sycamore Ridge binder, the one from closing, and compared it, page by page, to the official version the library had, stamped and recorded with the county. Same rules, same vague wording, but then he found something in the amendments section, a small update added 6 months ago. A new clause slipped into section 7.3. The Architectural Review Committee reserves the right to evaluate vehicles based on overall design language, material finish, and alignment with emerging community identity. Emerging community identity. He read it 3 times. No definition. No examples. No vote tally attached. Just, added, he asked the librarian if he could get a copy of the HOA board meeting minutes from that month. Sure, she said. They're online, but I can print the public portions. 10 minutes later, he had 10 pages. He flipped through. Budget approval. Landscaping. Contract renewal. A motion to repaint the mailbox posts. Then buried in the old business section, motion by E.T. to amend Section 7.3 Vehicle Standards. To include consideration of design language and community identity. Seconded by RL discussion. E.T. noted that new residents are seeking a more cohesive, forward-looking aesthetic. Concerns raised by MP regarding subjectivity. Vote. 4 in favor, 2 opposed, 1 abstention. Motion carried. No debate transcript. No definition of forward-looking aesthetic. It's just a vote, and the donor list appended at the end. Under voluntary contributions to Community Enhancement Fund, Reynolds family $5,000 note. Funds designated for aesthetic review and innovation grants. Mark closed the folder. He didn't feel angry. He felt seen, not in a good way, in the way you feel when you realize the game had rules you didn't know, and someone else had been changing them while you weren't looking. He drove home slowly. Windows down. Radio off. The neighborhood looked the same. Green lawns. Clean cars. Kids riding bikes. But now he saw the lines not painted on the road, but drawn in quiet decisions. In cream-colored letters. In compliments about innovation and concerns about tone. He pulled into his driveway. His truck sat where he'd left it. He got out. Walked around it, not inspecting for flaws, but acknowledging it. The small dent. The faded decal on the tailgate Marine Corps veteran Semper Fi, legal size, per Texas law. The work gloves tucked in the driver's side door pocket. The thermos of coffee in the Q folder. This wasn't just a vehicle. It was a record of jobs done, of families helped, of promises kept, and someone had decided without asking, without measuring, without even looking at the Ford catalog, that this record didn't fit the story. They wanted to tell about the street. He went inside, sat at the kitchen table, opened his laptop, typed how to request an HOA board hearing in Texas. Then, underneath, selective enforcement HOA examples. He read for an hour, learned that Texas Property Code Section 202.004 says covenants must be enforced uniformly, not just technically, but fairly. That courts have ruled against HOAs that target certain vehicles while ignoring others that clearly violate the same standards. He found a case from San Antonio, nearly identical. A firefighter's pickup fined for aggressive styling, while a neighbor's lifted Jeep with LED light bars got a pass. The HOA backed down after the man filed a formal complaint citing selective enforcement. Mark wasn't a lawyer, but he was a problem solver. And this was a problem with a pattern. He opened a new document. Started typing, not a rant, not a threat. A request. To the Sycamore Ridge HOA Board. Am writing to formally request an emergency hearing regarding the enforcement of Section 7.3 of the CC&Rs. I believe the application of this rule has been inconsistent and subjective, resulting in disparate treatment of homeowners based on vehicle type rather than measurable violation. I have documented examples of no enforcement for vehicles that exceed the stated standards in modification, height, and commercial appearance. I am not seeking special treatment. I am seeking equal treatment. Respectfully. He didn't sign it yet, just saved it. Then he went outside, sat on the front step, watched the sunset paint. The rooftop's gold. A neighbor walked by the guy with the Silverado. They nodded at each other. The man slowed. Everything okay? He asked. Mark looked at him. Really looked. Yeah, he said. Just thinking. The neighbor hesitated. Then, quietly, I kept the receipt. For the wheels I swapped out. If you need it. Mark nodded. Thanks, no more was said. But something had shifted. Not in the rules. In the air. Like the quiet before a storm. Not a destructive one. A cleansing one. The kind that washes the dust off the leaves, the kind that lets you see clearly again. Friday was 3 days. Away the fine loomed. But for the first time, since that cream-colored letter arrived, Mark didn't feel like he was standing alone in his driveway. He felt like he was standing on solid ground, and he knew whatever came next, he wasn't going to pretend the ground wasn't there. He let it sit. Not out of fear, out of respect for the process, for the neighborhood, even for Evelyn. He wanted to be sure this wasn't just pride talking. So he did what he always did when a system wasn't working. He tested it. He started small. On Monday morning, he walked the loop. Same path Evelyn took. Same time. Not with a clipboard. Just with his eyes open, he saw the Jeep first. 2 streets over. Black, massive tires, lifts so high the driver had to step up to get in. Front bumper had a winch. Roof rack loaded with kayaks. And on the tailgate, a matte black metal plate with bright yellow block letters, Trek's Outdoors Guided Adventures. No disclaimer. No personal use only. It's just a business name, bold as daylight. Mark stood across the street for nearly a minute. No violation notice on the windshield. No photo tacked to a clipboard. Just a neighbor backing out, waving at a kid on a scooter. He took a picture. Not sneaky. Just his phone, held low. Same angle Evelyn had used for his truck. Same lighting. Same clarity. Next stop. The corner house with the camper van. It wasn't just parked. It was living. Solar panel on the roof. A small awning extended over the side door. Flower boxes bolted to the wheel wells, real petunias, blooming pink and purple. A hand-painted sign near the rear window, Wanderley Est, 2021. Looked like a tiny mobile cottage. He knew the family. Nice people. Homeschool their kids. Take long trips in the summer. The van had been there since April. Still registered. Still moved once a month. He'd seen it pull out, circle the block, park right back. A little dance to stay within the no inoperable vehicle rule. But the sign? The flower boxes. The awning. Nowhere in the CC&Rs did it say no decorative non-factory additions. It marks black grill factory option. Never altered was discouraging visual harmony. He took another photo. Then he walked past the Cybertruck house. It was parked in the driveway, gleaming like a freshly opened soda can. Up close, it was even more striking. Sharp angles, no curves. Stainless steel that caught the sun and threw it back like a mirror. He crouched slightly, not touching, just observing, and ran his eyes over it. No mud, no dust, no tool marks. But the tires? Wider than legal for standard passenger vehicles in Texas. Easily over the 10-inch tread width limit, unless registered as a commercial or modified unit. And the bed. Technically open, no cover, but lined with custom black composite panels embossed with a geometric pattern. Looked expensive. Looked intentional. He checked the HOA newsletter archive again on his phone, found the article. Read it slowly. The Reynolds family's choice reflects Sycamore Ridge's evolution toward a more dynamic, progressive identity. Their commitment to sustainable transportation and bold design aligns with our long-term vision, progressive identity. He wondered what his identity looked like on paper. HVAC. Technician, veteran, father of two, owner. Of a 10-year-old pickup with a 2-inch leveling kit? Did that not count as progress? Was progress only allowed if it came wrapped in brushed steel and cost more than his house? He went home and opened his laptop, created a new folder. Section 7.3 Enforcement. Examples. Added the 3 photos. Then he dug deeper. He found the county property records online free. Public, just a few clicks. Looked up the Reynolds house. Saw the $5,000 donation listed in the HOA's annual financial summary, not as a fine or fee, but as a community enhancement contribution. Footnote. Funds allocated to aesthetic review initiatives and resident engagement programs. He didn't call it a bribe. He wasn't going to say that, ever. But he knew what it looked like when money and influence leaned on the same scale as rules. That afternoon, he drove to the auto parts store, not for work. Just to browse. He walked past the grill's rows of them, hanging on pegs, plastic, aluminum, mesh, black, chrome. Some labeled OEM replacement, others aggressive style, rugged look, tactical. He picked up one black. Steel, hexagonal pattern. Looked almost identical to his. The tag read, direct fit for 2009-2014. F-150XL, XLT, factory style appearance. No modifications required. He showed it to the counter guy, a retired mechanic with grease under his nails and a coffee stain on his shirt. This one, Mark said. Is this aftermarket? The man squinted. Nah, that's just the G62 package grill. Ford sold it for years. Bolton. Same mounting points. You can't even tell it's not stock unless you check the part number. Mark bought it, not to swap. Just to have. Then he stopped by the library again, asked the same librarian if she could print one more thing. The Ford Motor Company's 2012 F-150 ordering guide, the full dealer version. With trim packages and optional equipment, she smiled. "You're doing your homework." "Trying to," he said. She printed 20 pages, glossy, full color. There, on page 7, under XL Appearance Group, 17 black steel wheels, black body side cladding, black grille with dark mesh insert, hood scoops, non-functional all factory. All available. All his. He tucked the pages into a clear sleeve. Added them to the folder. That evening, his wife made spaghetti. The kids argued over who got the last meatball. Normal sounds? Normal life, but Mark felt different. Not defiant. Not combative, just anchored. He wasn't making this up. He wasn't oversensitive. The pattern was there, visible, measurable, documented. It wasn't about trucks. It was about which trucks. Not about rules. About who the rules protected. He thought about the 2 other men he'd spoken to, the one who paid the fines, the one who swapped his wheels. Good men, hard workers. They hadn't backed down because they were weak. They'd backed down because the cost, time, energy, risk wasn't worth it for them. And that was okay. But for him, the cost of silence felt higher. Because if he let this go, what came next? A note about his son's bike helmet left on the porch. A warning about the garden shed being too rustic. A suggestion that maybe, just maybe, certain professions didn't quite align with community expectations. He wasn't paranoid. He'd seen how these things started. Small things. Polite things. Just a suggestion, for the good of everyone. They always began with aesthetics. They always ended with exclusion. He sat at the table after the dishes were done. Opened the draft hearing request. Added 2 lines. I have attached photographic and documentary evidence of multiple vehicles in Sycamore Ridge that exceed the stated standards in Section 7.3 in modification. Height, signage, and material finish, yet have received no enforcement action. I am not requesting an exception. I am requesting consistency. He didn't say, "You're targeting people like me." He didn't say, "This is unfair." Just laid out what was true. Then he hit print. 10 copies stapled. Each one, put them in a manila envelope. Addressed it to Sycamore Ridge, HOA. Board of Director Sighton, Secretary via certified mail and hand delivery. He drove to the post office the next morning. The clerk handed him the certified mail receipt. "Need a signature on delivery?" She asked. "Yes," Mark said. "Anything else?" Paused. "Actually, can you tell me how long the HOA has to respond to a formal hearing request in Texas?" She blinked. "Not my area, hun, but I think it's 10 days. He nodded. "Thanks." Walked out into the sunlight. Didn't feel triumphant. Felt relieved, like he'd finally turned on a light in a room he'd been walking through in the dark. That afternoon, he got a call, not Evelyn. A woman's voice, calm, professional. "Hi, this is the HOA secretary. I received your request. I forwarded it to the board. They'll review it at their next meeting 2 weeks from Thursday. Is there an option for an emergency hearing?" Mark asked. "The violation deadline is this Friday." Pause. Keyboard clicking. "I can note your request," she said. "But emergency hearings require a majority vote of the board. And, well, the chair would need to support it." "Understood," Mark said. He hung up. No surprise there, but something in her tone, the slight hesitation, the well, told him she'd seen requests like this before, and she knew how they usually ended. Friday came. Hot, humid, the kind of day where the air feels heavy, like it's holding its breath. Mark woke up early, made coffee, walked outside. His truck sat in the driveway, same as always. He didn't move it, didn't cover it, just stood beside it for a minute, hand resting on the hood, warm from the rising sun. Then he went inside and checked the mailbox. There it was, a new envelope, cream cardstock, gold, oak leaf seal, He opened it at the kitchen table. Same. Format. Notice of imposed fine. $75. Violation remains uncorrected as of 8/16. Daily penalty of $100 will accrue beginning 8/17 until resolution. No photo this time, just a line at the bottom. Handwritten in neat script, let's talk before this escalates. E. He stared at the signature. Not Evelyn. Just E, like they were old friends. Like this was a misunderstanding between reasonable people. He folded the letter, put it in the folder right behind the photos. The Ford brochure, the hearing request, not as proof of defeat, as proof of sequence. First, the rule, then the exception, then the fine, then the invitation to surrender. He made a choice. He didn't call her. He didn't email. He went to the hardware store, bought a piece of 1/4-inch plywood, 2 feet by 3, a can of flat black paint, a stencil kit, a tube of outdoor adhesive. Then he drove home. In the garage, with the door open and the fan running, he sanded the plywood smooth, wiped it down. Let it dry. He painted the whole board black. Let that dry then. Using the stencils, he lettered it slowly, carefully. Like sign painting, HOA violation review station 2012 Ford F150XL VIN on file then. Below, factory option grill, G62 package. Leveling kit, +2 legal and non-modifying. No commercial signage, clean and operational at the bottom. In smaller letters, why is this truck disruptive? But others aren't. He didn't add the photos. Not yet, just the facts. The truth, plain and simple. He waited until Saturday morning, to 7 a.m. when the street was quiet, but neighbors were starting to stir. He backed the truck into the driveway, not hurried, not defiant. Just deliberate, opened the tailgate, set up a folding chair, the kind he used at Little League games. Then he placed the sign on the tailgate, propped against the toolbox, stepped back, looked at it. It didn't shout. It just stated like a receipt, like a report card, like something that belonged in a courtroom. Not a driveway. He sat in the chair, sipped his coffee, waited. It didn't take long. First, Mrs. Callahan, his oldest neighbor, early 80s, walked by with her terrier. She stopped, read the sign, smiled. About time someone put it in writing, she said. Mark just nodded a few minutes later. The man with the Silverado pulled out of his driveway, saw the sign, slowed, gave a small thumbs dash up. Then the homeschooling family. The ones with the camper van drove past in their minivan. The mom rolled down her window. Need a witness? She asked, half joking. Maybe soon, Mark said. By 8:30, a small cluster had formed, not a crowd. Just 3 or 4 neighbors, sipping coffee, reading the sign, glancing down the street like they were waiting for the next act in a play they hadn't realized they were part of. That's when the silver Prius turned the corner. Evelyn, she, parked across the street, same spot as last time, got out, didn't rush, walked up the driveway, heels clicking softly on the concrete. She didn't look at Mark. She looked at the sign, read every line. Her face didn't change. No anger, no surprise. Just a slow tightening around the eyes, like someone realizing a door they thought was locked had been open all along. When she finally looked at him, her voice was low, just for him. Mark, this is inappropriate. How so? He asked. This is public shaming. It's confrontational. No, he said. It's documentation. I'm requesting review. Same as the rules allow. She glanced at the neighbors, lowered her voice further. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I'm making it clearer, he said. She took a breath, removed the sign. We'll talk today, right now. I'll bring the board chair. I prefer the full board, he said. At the hearing, her jaw tightened. Then, quietly, do you have any idea what a $100 a day fine does? It adds up fast. Next thing you know, it's a lien. On your house, I know, he said. And for what? A truck? For fairness, he said. She stared at him, not with hatred. With something sadder, disappointment, like he'd broken an unspoken agreement. Play along, and you'll be fine. He hadn't. He'd asked for the rule book, and now he was reading it out loud. She turned to leave, then stopped, without looking back. She said, "You'll get your hearing," and walked away. Mark stayed in the chair. The sun climbed higher. A kid on a bike stopped. "Read the sign." Asked his dad, "What's a VIN?" His dad just said something important. I knew. Someone had taken a photo, not a sneaky one. A clear, front-facing shot, the truck, the sign, Mark sitting calmly in the chair, coffee in hand. It showed up in the neighborhood group chat an hour later. No caption, just the image. And under it, the first comment, "Finally." Mark didn't post it, didn't share it. He just let it be. Because the point wasn't to go viral. The point was to show up, to stand in your driveway in the heat, in the light, and say, without shouting, "I'm here. This is mine," and the rules should mean the same thing. For all of us, he knew the fight wasn't over. Fine still stood. The hearing was weeks away. But something had changed. Not in the HOA. In the street, people were talking. Not about trucks, about fairness, about what it meant to belong. And, for the first time in a long time, Mark didn't feel like he was defending his place. He felt like he was helping to rebuild it. On something stronger than cream-colored paper. On truth. On consistency. On the quiet, unshakable belief that a man shouldn't have to hide what he uses to take care of his family, just to fit someone else's fantasy. He finished his coffee, folded the chair, left the sign on the tailgate, and went inside to help his son fix a flat tire on his bike, the kind of work that didn't need approval, the kind that just got done.